That concludes the awarding of the prizes.
That's one way to kill the nerves, is shake 400 hands. Good morning, everyone. My name is Olly Rathbone, and as a Trinity School alumnus, it is a real privilege to stand before you today as this year's prize-giving guest speaker. When I left Trinity in 2013, I never imagined that perhaps one day I would return to this stage to share a story that began right here in these classrooms and corridors. Earlier this year, I completed something that had been quietly growing in my mind since I was sitting where many of you are today. I successfully rowed, unsupported, across the Atlantic Ocean, a journey of 3,000 miles from the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. It took me 39 days. 39 days of relentless rowing, extreme conditions, sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and mental challenges unlike anything that I'd ever experienced. But the story doesn't really begin at the Atlantic Ocean, it begins here at Trinity. Because when I joined Trinity as a JBug in 2005, I spent 7 fantastic years here before leaving after sixth form in 2013. Some of the teachers in the room may remember that those were the years when Trinity first became co-educational. And looking back now, one of the things that I'm most fond of at this school is the friends that I made here, both male and female, still my closest today. Now, when I was 12 years old and in first form, I'm trying to figure where that is out in the room, but when I was 12, I watched a documentary called Through Hell and High Water. It followed former Olympic rower James Cracknell and TV broadcaster Ben Fogle as they rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. To 12-year-old me, it was the most extraordinary thing that I'd ever seen. I remember sitting there watching it, completely captivated, the challenge, the adventure, the unknown of it all. And at the end of the documentary, I remember thinking, that's something I'm going to do one day. It was a simple thought, but it stayed with me for years. Throughout my teens and into my 20s, that idea remained very quietly in the background. Every now and then, I'd bring it up to friends and family, and most people would respond exactly how you'd expect. You're not going to do that, mate. And honestly, I understand why you'd think that. Because if you look at the numbers, less than 2,000 people have ever rowed across any ocean. To put that into perspective, nearly 8,000 people have summited Mount Everest. So rather than chasing that distant dream immediately, I focused on things that felt a lot more achievable to me here at school. And sport became a huge part of my life, and in particular it was rugby. And I want to give a special mention to Mr. Beresford Miller, who I can see at the top there, for helping nurture that passion. Even on those occasions when we were 70-0 down against John Fisher. Those weren't always easy afternoons. But looking back now, sport taught me lessons that became invaluable later in life. It taught me discipline, resilience, teamwork, adaptability, the ability to keep going when things aren't going your way. At the time, I thought I was just learning how to play rugby. What I was really learning were life skills that I would one day rely upon in the Atlantic Ocean. So fast forward 13 years, and after that first form documentary, I finally decided to make my dream a reality. And I entered the world's toughest row. That same race that James Cracknell and Ben Fogle did years before. Every December, boats leave the Canary Islands and row 3,000 miles across the Atlantic to Antigua. There's no support boats, there's no opportunities to stop, there's no shops, no ports, there's certainly no rescue vessel following you behind. Once you leave land, you are entirely on your own. Now, I chose to complete that crossing with my university friend George, and together we spent 3 years preparing for it. The preparation itself was almost a full-time job. First came the physical preparation, and when I say endless hours on a rowing machine, I genuinely mean endless. I think my rowing machine clocked 4.6 million meters that I had trained on before leaving. We also had to complete over 120 training hours at sea on the boat itself. We were preparing our bodies to row on a schedule of 2 hours of rowing, followed by 2 hours of rest, for 24 hours a day for more than a month. Then there was the practical preparation. Ocean navigation, safety courses, fundraising, learning how to repair equipment, preparing over 50 days of food and supplies, essentially learning how to become sailors, despite having absolutely no sailing experience whatsoever. And finally, there was the mental preparation, perhaps the most important of all. We worked with coaches on resilience, motivation, teamwork, communication. We talked extensively about handling setbacks. We discussed conflict. For those of you who've got a brochure, I think towards the back, there's a photo to show the boat that I actually rowed in, and you can see me and George rowing it together. For context, that is a 7-meter length boat by 1.5 meters in width. It is a very small space to spend with one other person for 39 days if there's conflict. George and I set ourselves a very ambitious goal. We wanted to win the pairs category. There's 43 boats in the race, and 14 of them were pairs. Being competitive people we were, we didn't enter to simply take part, we wanted to win it. And that goal shaped everything we did. We held each other accountable and we prepared for every possible scenario, or at least we thought we had. Now, before the race, people often asked me what I was most afraid of. Interestingly, it wasn't storms, it's not the sharks, it's not being alone in the middle of the ocean. For me, my biggest fear was simple: that something would happen to us that would prevent us from finishing what we set out to do. And that fear became all too apparent only 6 hours into the race. But before we get there, let me take you to the start line. The atmosphere was incredible. 43 boats, hundreds of people from all over the world, families cheering, music blasting, camera crews everywhere. Years of preparation had all led to this moment, and finally we launched. Now, our boat was left last among the pairs, so we immediately had work to do. But we saw that as an opportunity. We'd rather chase than be chased. And as soon as we cleared that marina, we started rowing real hard, and it was amazing. The adrenaline was flowing, and we were overtaking boats that had left long before us. Within an hour, we had moved into third place among the pairs, and we were top 10 among the entire fleet. Things were going exactly as we forecasted. And then suddenly it wasn't. 6 hours after leaving land, very much still within sight, our autohelm failed completely. Now, an autohelm is essentially the piece of equipment that automatically steers the boat. Without it, you must manually steer every second of every day. Our screen was completely blank. Nothing. 3 years of preparation, a lifelong dream, and within 6 hours, it felt like it was slipping away. It was devastating. So we spent hours trying to fix it. At one point, I was even on the phone to the CEO of the company that manufactured this autohelm. And I'll never forget what I said to him as I sent him a photo over WhatsApp using Starlink. And he said, "I've never seen this before. Good luck." Not what you wanted to hear. Night fell, the equipment still didn't work. So we began manually steering. One person rowing, one person steering. They're holding ropes that are connected to the rudder through the boat, and they are pulling it manually in order to keep us in the right direction. Everything we'd hoped for suddenly slipping away as we watched boats row off into the distance. Now, for days this continued. It's not hours, it's days. And eventually we realized something quite important. We realized that we could no longer control what had happened to us, but we could control how we responded to it. So we changed our goal. We had a difficult conversation and we sat down and we realized that winning is no longer realistic. So instead, we set ourselves a new mission: simply cross the Atlantic Ocean. And that shift in mindset changed everything for us. Because instead of focusing on what we'd lost, we focused on what remained possible. And suddenly we started moving forward in rhythm again. Now, 2 weeks later, something remarkable happened. The autohelm didn't turn on, but the wind disappeared completely. Now, normally wind would help push the boats and the fleet westward from the Canary Islands to Antigua. But for almost 2 weeks, there was virtually none. The ocean became flat. It's like a lake. It was very heavy and rowing through custard. It was exhausting, but for us, it created an opportunity. Because without wind, every boat in that race was effectively relying on pure power. So steering without an autohelm no longer mattered. And we were finally on a level playing field with the other boats. And that played directly into our strengths. So George and I seized that opportunity. We pushed harder than ever. We never stopped. We kept grinding day after day, shift after shift, and gradually boat after boat. In just over a week, we'd managed to overtake 15 boats. And from being near the back of the fleet, we were suddenly climbing through the rankings with quite some pace. Momentum returned, belief returned, and finally we reached that halfway point. 1,500 miles from any piece of land. It's an extremely surreal thing to think about, and it is one of the most surreal moments of my life. George and I stopped rowing for the first time in 23 days for 30 minutes. We ate snacks, we cracked open a beer, and we sat there and we took in the complete amazing environment that we were currently sat in. They say that at this point in the crossing, you're actually closer to the International Space Station than you are to any other confirmed human being. It is an extraordinary thought to realize how isolated you actually are when you're there. For the first time, we actually felt like Antigua was achievable as well. The second half became a magical experience. We witnessed the power and the beauty of the Atlantic Ocean. It threw everything it had at us, and we loved it. And finally, we finished that row. And we made land in Antigua in 39 days, 10 hours, and 50 minutes, with great pride, given the circumstances that we faced. We were told upon arrival by experts in the ocean rowing community that without a working autohelm, steering the entire way, our row was approximately 50% harder than the average crossing. Now, we finished that row because Not because everything went well, because it didn't. But we finished that row because when things went wrong, we kept going. Now, standing here today, I need to be honest with all of you. I was not a perfect student. Far from it. I loved my sports, I loved my friends, but academically, I struggled. I failed many, many, many times. I often felt like I was falling behind, especially when you're surrounded by so many incredibly talented people that come to this school. There were moments where I doubted myself, moments where things didn't go to plan, moments where success seemed so far away. And that's why I want to finish this talk by reminding everyone in the room of Trinity's motto: they who persevere conquer. Those aren't just words on a wall. They're a way of approaching life. Because success isn't about never failing. Success isn't about having the perfect circumstances or a working order held. Success is about continuing when things become difficult. It's about adapting when life changes your plans. It's about refusing to give up. And those are lessons that were taught to me right here in this school, especially these classrooms and those rainy sporting fields on cold afternoons representing the school. And years later, those same lessons helped carry me across an ocean. Today I can say I've achieved something that fewer than 2,000 people have ever done. I've built a career that I'm very proud of, and I've raised over £20,000 for the Bashart Foundation, all because of lessons in life I learned here at this school. To all of you sitting here today, remember this: you are not all running the same race. You will each face different challenges, different setbacks, and different opportunities. Sometimes life will push you forward, and sometimes it will hold you back. But if you stay focused, keep adapting, continue to move forward when things go wrong, there is no limit to what you can achieve. Thank you.